both on? Okay. We have here with us the poet Michael White from UNC Wilmington, and he is going to tell us about his poem Coup, inspired by the 1898 events that led to the only successful coup d'etat in American history that anyone knows of. So he'll tell us a little bit about the poem and read the poem. Michael, all yours.
Thank you very much. Coup was written in the fall of 2008, and it's true, it was inspired by the coup of 1898, but what prompted me to write it was the presidential election of 2008, when Obama was elected. And it was that week of the first week of November when this country seemed to be torn between impulses of progress and also impulses against progress. And I was really, really moved by that for some reason. I was overjoyed that it appeared that Obama was going to win. I was also appalled by some of the threats and protests that were going on around the country, and I wanted to write about that. I didn't know how, and so what came to me, and it came together fairly quickly, was that I could write about Wilmington's racial history, particularly 1898, because 1898, as you know, occurred during the election year. So this was on my mind throughout that whole week. The next problem I encountered was that I had to figure out a way to frame it as a contemporary speaker. And I decided just to play it as straight as possible, which is to say, I put myself in the poem in the most natural way possible for me. Because I come down here a lot, and especially back then when my daughter was little, we came down every Saturday. We came down on our tandem bicycle. We'd go to the farmer's market. We'd walk up and down. We'd go to the Children's Museum down the way. And we spent a lot of time out here. And this is also where some of the most horrendous events of 1898 occurred. It's kind of a good, it's an illustration, I think, that holds true throughout the South and probably throughout America. Which is that the scene of beauty is also the scene of carnage. So this is what I did. I tried to layer one historical period over another, and because that's how I feel, and that's the way that the Obama election made me feel. By the way, and we were walking right down here, and we saw this little fish. And it was funny, we actually had ice cream cones, and we saw this little fish swimming right along there. It was the oddest little fish I've ever seen. I'd never actually seen a long-nosed gar in the water. It was about this big. I didn't know what I was looking at. My daughter and I were both incredibly curious, so we followed it half, the way up this whole riverfront. And that happened the Saturday before the election. So that's where this poem begins. Everyone goes for an evening walk next to the Cape Fear's roiled and dented current sidling past as little rivulets of melting praline ice cream drip down the sides of the waffle cone I'm usually holding here. Last Sunday, Sophia spotted a long-nosed gar with delicate, attenuated bowsprit ghosting upstream just beside this wharf. We followed it. How well the river fits the city, white stone facing the tea-black tide, the gutted ribs of hulls, sunk bones of piers, half risen once again on the other side. Not much has changed, I think. Sometimes I imagine 10 November 1898, the thud of a rifle butt at 8 a.m. on the door of the Daily Record. Post-election Thursday morning, Colonel Waddell backed by his white mob. You have to expect someone would knock down lanterns, someone find a match. The pop and whoosh of upper story windows, flurries of sparks, then suddenly the crash. You have to imagine cheers, their soaring hearts. Therefore the March on Brooklyn, the colored section, whites called Darktown, where within an hour, a shout, a shot, a fusillade let fly on a group of blacks on the porch of Walker's store. Some died where they fell, the others ran away, but the infantry was called out anyway. Captain James on the 4th Street Bridge to Brooklyn told his machine gun squad to shoot to kill. In neighborhood churches, parks, and black-owned houses everywhere were targets. Panic spread from block to block like a sheet of wind-fanned flame. Dan Wright was burned out, forced to run the gauntlet. 40 guns let loose at his back while his wife, pleading, watched. Josh Halsey, trapped at last, was forced to run the gauntlet. 40 guns tore off the top of his head, as someone said, while his young daughter watched. Imagine a woman peering out through the drawn blinds of her living room as every prayer she had ever known flits in and out of her mind. Her baby cries as just outside the horse-drawn Gatling crew takes aim, each burst of rounds like the Holy Ghost, like the hieroglyphs of stars. So everyone who could run ran. 4,000 women and children exiled into swamps and graveyards. Dante sang of blackened waters, city of wretches boiled in pitch, and so Brooklyn became. By 4 p.m., Waddell was declared mayor. By 5, gunmetal sundown, what it was ghost town. Rubble of houses burning, crackle of sniper fire, a pall of black smoke drifting down the river. Some of the wounded crawled beneath their own homes and were found by the stench days later. 25 workers picked off near the railroad yard were buried there in a ditch. But most were left in plain sight. Manifestos, love notes to the future, street pole lynchings, rigged bodies lying in pools of blood. When we turned him over, Mr. Nigga had a look of surprise on his face, one said. And what it had been now no longer was. Its bricklayers and drayers, its stevedores and laundresses, no longer was. No one came back. And yet it is so beautiful here. The whole dusk taken in, the whole dusk given back again, as livid strokes of cloud and drawbridge lobbed across the bronze green dark. One of the last men killed that night was killed right here on Water Street. 2 white men claimed an unnamed black had sassed them. Therefore, they shot him. Therefore, they tossed his body off the dock, where fathers and daughters ramble and lovers talk, and everyone goes for an evening walk.
Very nice. Thank you.